The film opens in silence. A woman stands in the dim light of a shooting range, her pistol trained on a man named Khalil. But she isn't here to hurt him. She's here to make him hurt her. She needs him to pull the trigger because she no longer wants to be alive. Khalil refuses. He begs her to put the gun down. Nancy tells him plainly, if he doesn't shoot her, she'll shoot him. She starts counting down. 10, 9, 8. Khalil watches her in disbelief, and when the countdown reaches its end, he raises his weapon and fires. We find Nancy in a quiet kitchen carefully shaving her son Jesse's head. It's a small, tender ritual, a mother's farewell. Jesse has just been accepted into the military, and this is how their family says goodbye, with steady hands and unspoken pride. Time moves fast after that. Jesse marries his girlfriend Diana in a small, warm celebration. Nancy glows. She's the kind of mother who feels every moment twice, once in real time and once in her heart. Later, Diana and Nancy set up the baby's nursery together. Diana feels awkward about moving in, but Nancy waves it away. Having family close is all she needs. It's a video call, dim and pixelated. He's somewhere in Afghanistan on a covert mission. He tells his mother how much he misses her. She updates him on the nursery. He smiles, then hesitates. He asks if she truly believes he'll be a good father. She says yes, without a second of doubt. But Jesse isn't really asking about fatherhood. Something darker is sitting on his chest. He tells Nancy that the people back home have no real idea what's happening out there. Then he describes a patrol. They were tracking militants. Anyone holding a cell phone gets shot immediately. No questions asked. Jesse followed that order. He saw a young man with a phone and pulled the trigger. The man dropped. And Jesse cannot stop seeing it because he's not sure that man was a threat at all. He thinks he may have killed an innocent person. Nancy listens, and then she does what mothers do. She tells him he did exactly what he was trained to do, that he made no mistake, that he deserves a medal for his courage on the field. Then Jesse's internet connection cuts out. The screen goes black, and that is the last time Nancy hears her son's voice. The next morning is ordinary enough. Nancy clocks in at the ammunition manufacturing plant where she works. Her manager, Rick, intercepts her with a smile and a complimentary pass to a local shooting range, encouraging her to learn to shoot properly. He brags that putting rounds through paper targets gives him a rush of power and control. Nancy half listens. He asks about Jesse. She tells him Jesse called just last night. Everything is fine. But when Nancy pulls into her driveway that evening, the world rearranges itself. Two figures are standing at her front door. Officer Galen and a senior military official. Nancy doesn't need a single word, she knows. That's what two uniformed officers at a front door always mean. She gets out of the car and the world is suddenly, permanently different from the one she woke up in this morning. At first, denial. She tells Galen she literally just spoke to Jesse. How is this possible? But reality doesn't negotiate. It arrives and waits. And Nancy catches up. She walks inside, and she falls completely apart. The crying doesn't stop. Sleep doesn't come. She sits in her house in a grief so complete it has no language yet. 2 days later, she and Diana drive together to Jesse's funeral. On the way, Diana asks if she can come live with Nancy for a while. Nancy agrees without thinking. She tells her that the day she married Jesse, Nancy gained a second daughter. At the funeral home, Nancy approaches her son's body. She reaches out. She weeps. Then she makes an unusual request. She wants the boots Jesse was wearing when he died. And then she turns to Galen and asks a more unusual one. What kind of bullet killed her son? Galen tells her it was American-made ammunition. She adds that they chose not to remove it from Jesse's body, to preserve the remains. But Nancy latches onto something. She pushes for the exact type and manufacturer. She's told that extracting the bullet requires the legal consent of Jesse's wife. Diana is right there. And Diana says no. She pleads with Nancy to let Jesse rest in peace. What she's asking for would disfigure his body. And that is not the kind of love Jesse deserves. Nancy goes quiet. She walks out. In the car, she admits Diana was right. Jesse wouldn't want an autopsy. But Diana responds with a brutal kind of honesty. Jesse is gone. He's not here to want anything anymore. And something inside Nancy fractures completely. She screams that she doesn't care. She is getting that bullet out of her son's body by any means necessary. Diana, frightened by what she sees, urges her to speak to a therapist, then steps out of the car and walks away. Nancy drives home alone. She cannot eat. She cannot sleep. She sits in the silence, completely unmoored. The following day, she finds herself in a military support group, a room full of parents who know exactly what the weight of a folded flag feels like. She listens as a man named Khalil speaks about justice and divine providence. Then another grieving mother takes the floor and shares the story of her son, killed by a rocket in the Middle East. She says she prays for the people responsible for his death so she can find it in her heart to forgive them. Nancy detonates. She tells the room she would sooner die than forgive anyone who had a hand in taking her son. She gets up and walks out. Khalil follows. He catches up outside, introduces himself as the group's facilitator, and tells her there's no wrong way to grieve, but she needs to let the anger out somehow, even if that means standing in the middle of a street and screaming. He hands her his card and promises she can call him any hour of the day or night. Nancy takes the card, tells him she came to the wrong meeting, and leaves. Back home, Nancy falls into a rabbit hole. She researches the ammunition used by militant fighters in Afghanistan, and what she finds stops her cold. The factory where she works and where she has spent years of her life sells ammunition to those same militants. The next morning, she quietly pockets 4 rounds from the factory floor. Then she drives to the funeral home and requests one final private moment with her son. The director steps out. The moment the door closes, Nancy opens the casket, reaches inside her son's body with her bare hands, and removes the bullet. She keeps it. She wraps it carefully, like something precious, because to her, it is. She takes those 4 stolen rounds and the bullet extracted from Jesse's body straight to a ballistics laboratory. The technician looks at her like she's in the wrong place. Nancy tells him the bullet killed her son. She tells him the 4 factory rounds were manufactured at her own workplace, possibly by her own hands. She needs to know if she is connected to his death. The technician is moved. He runs the test. When the results come back, he delivers them quietly, a 74% probability match. Nancy doesn't cry, she doesn't move. She just stands there, absorbing the possibility that her labor, her daily work, her paycheck is part of the chain that ended her son's life. Jesse's military funeral proceeds with full honors. The honor guard fires its salute. The military band plays its mournful farewell. To everyone else in attendance, it is music. To Nancy, it sounds exactly like the gunshot that stole her boy. When she gets home, grief takes on a new shape. She drifts into a waking hallucination. Jesse as a baby, as a little boy, as the young man who called from a grainy screen and asked if he'd be a good father. Then the battle, then the machines at the factory, churning out round after round, hour after hour, day after day. She has been a part of all of it. And now, she is done grieving. Now she wants revenge. Her first target is Rick. She stakes out the factory, waits for the floor to clear, then walks in and finds him. She tells him straight to his face, the ammunition his plant produced is the same ammunition that killed her son, Jesse. Rick goes defensive immediately. Once a product leaves their dock, he says, what happens to it is no longer their concern. Nancy tears him apart. She tells him that money and self-interest drive people to sell anything, even when it destroys the children of their own country. She admits the guilt she carries, how she went to work every single day giving everything she had to maximize that output. And that output found its way into her son's body. She tells him the psychological weight of that knowledge is enough to break any human being, and beyond the guilt, every paycheck she ever cashed was paid in Jesse's blood. The weapon meant to protect their sons is now killing them. She reminds him she was a pacifist. She despised guns. But she took that factory job to survive and raise Jesse, and Jesse died from a bullet her own hands may have helped make. Rick tries to redirect her. He explains it's the global arms dealers who run the real operation. They decide where weapons and ammunition flow. They engineer the wars they sell to both sides, and they profit while soldiers bleed. Nancy looks him dead in the eye and says she is sick of a country that wraps its hypocrisy in patriotism. She tells him the truth the slogans hide. America is the largest arms dealer on the planet. Then she picks up a lighter and holds it out. She will burn this place to the ground. Rick's face drains of color. He begs. And watching him beg, Nancy is struck by a question she can't outrun. If she burns this building, she takes down the livelihoods of every innocent worker who shows up here every morning just trying to get by, and people exactly like her. She puts the lighter down, she walks out, but she destroys Rick's car on the way. On the drive home, an opposition broadcast crackles through the radio. A voice warns the American public they are living inside an illusion, that the government decides who lives and who dies, and that American lives are not exempt from that calculus, all in service of maintaining global dominance. The words harden something inside Nancy. Her resolve locks in. She goes to the military base and finds Galen. She demands to know exactly how Jesse died. Galen tells her they were operating in southern Afghanistan, pursuing high-value targets through mountain terrain. Nancy fires back. Jesse told her they were chasing people who weren't even armed. Galen shuts it down, classified. Nancy pivots. She demands to know how American ammunition found its way into enemy hands. She describes the smuggling networks she's researched. She wants a name. She wants someone to be responsible. When Galen refuses to say another word, Nancy snaps. She lunges across the desk, grabs Galen, and screams into her face that she trusted these people with her son, and they gave him back in a flag. Military police rush in and physically drag Nancy away from the desk. She is taken in for questioning. The investigator asks what she planned to do with the weapon she was carrying. Nancy apologizes and blames everything on sleep deprivation. The investigator shows empathy. War carries risks that both Nancy and Jesse understood going in. But the consequence is firm. Nancy is banned from military property until a full internal review is completed. She goes to the shooting range to bleed off the rage into paper targets. Then Khalil appears in the stall beside her. He mentions he enjoys shooting too and suggests she try a different weapon to sharpen her form. She agrees. They walk into the gun shop and she selects an American rifle. Back on the firing line, Khalil coaches her on her aim. And in the quiet between shots, he tells her he lost his son too, under terrible circumstances. He doesn't elaborate, not yet. Back home, Diana arrives and tells Nancy the mailbox is full of overdue bills. She announces she's moving in next week to be there for her. Nancy reaches into a drawer and hands her a check, her entire life savings. Diana stares at it and refuses. She tells Nancy the military already issued an $18,000 payment. Nancy flinches and calls it blood money. She forces the check into Diana's hands and tells her she doesn't want anything from this world anymore. Diana hears exactly what's underneath those words. She understands what Nancy is really saying, and she breaks. She confesses she cannot do this alone, cannot raise Jesse's baby without her. She is not asking, she is begging. Something in Nancy gives, she promises to stay. The next day, Nancy and Khalil are back at the range, and then Khalil tells her the truth. He is Afghan. He worked as an interpreter for U.S. forces in Kabul. Because of that work, the militants labeled him a traitor and killed his 7-year-old son in retaliation. Taking a break from the targets, Khalil describes what that life was like. The threats that came before, the horror that followed, the specific weight of knowing his boy paid the price for a choice he made. He admits it with no attempt to soften it. His son is dead because of which side he chose. Nancy's mind moves in a dangerous direction. She asks him why it couldn't have been the Americans who killed his son, so the whole world could see the militants as monsters, and the Americans could keep playing the role of peacemakers, just like always. Khalil rejects this firmly. The militants sent him direct death threats before it happened. He knew the danger. Then Nancy turns cold. She accuses him of betraying his homeland, of selling himself to the Americans in exchange for a comfortable life on American soil. Khalil looks at her for a long moment, then quietly mocks the hatred she has wrapped herself in. Nancy ends the conversation. She walks away. On the way home, she spots Diana with a man she doesn't recognize. That night, Diana shows up at her front door. Nancy goes off, accusing Diana of burning through Jesse's death benefits on a luxury car and a new boyfriend. Diana explodes right back. The man is her cousin. He is the only person who has actually been there for her through all of this, driving her to the hospital for prenatal checkups since the baby is almost due. Then Diana says a name, Jesse. She's naming the baby Jesse. Nancy freezes. She never expected that. She offers to drive Diana to the hospital, but Diana refuses, still cut deep by the accusations. Nancy breaks down and apologizes, and truly apologizes. She explains that she spent her life believing she was serving something, protecting her country, shielding soldiers like her son. Then she discovered the system she was loyal to had been working against her the entire time. That realization cracked her open and made her unable to trust anyone. Diana listens, and she forgives. The next morning, Nancy goes to Jesse's grave. She kneels in the grass and cries quietly, just a mother and her son. Then the grief hardens back into resolve. She drives to the military base and surveils the recruitment officer who signed Jesse up. She hides in the trunk of her car, lining him up in her sights as he exits his office. But when the moment comes, she can't pull the trigger. She lowers the gun. She tracks him instead to a nearby diner and slides into the booth across from him. She asks if he remembers Jesse. He says, of course. Nancy accuses him of having blood on his hands and then places her handgun on the table between them. The officer tenses but holds his nerve. He tells her she isn't the first grieving mother to sit across from him with that accusation. Many have lost children in this war. He asks how she felt the day Jesse enlisted. She swallows. She was proud. The officer rolls up his pant leg to reveal a prosthetic limb, lost in combat against the very fighters who killed her son. He tells her the enemy celebrates when Americans fall. He wants her to see who the real enemy is. Right then, Nancy catches a glimpse through the window. Khalil standing outside watching her. She abandons the table and rushes out to confront him. He's already gone. Not a trace. She gets in her car and screams until her throat burns. Then, in a fractured moment of grief-born madness, she writes Khalil's name on her hand. Her broken mind has now placed him on her list, not for anything he did, but for where he was born. That night, she parks outside Khalil's house and watches him through the window. She raises her gun and fires a single shot. It misses. She drives away fast. Khalil hears it. He is out the door and into his car within seconds, following her taillights across the dark city until they stop in the parking lot of the shooting range. He goes inside. He moves through the building, and he finds her standing in the firing lane, her rifle aimed directly at his chest. We are exactly where we began. Khalil raises his hands and moves toward her slowly. Nancy, instead of firing, tosses the rifle to him and draws her handgun. She points it at herself and tells him to end it. She has confirmed what she feared most. She was part of the machinery that killed her son. Her hands, her labor, her factory shifts. The guilt is a weight she cannot survive. She begins counting down. And when she reaches the end, Khalil raises his weapon and fires a round into her shoulder. She drops. He runs to her. He holds her on the floor of that shooting range and tells her she is going to live. Nancy wakes up in the hospital. When she steps into the hallway, Khalil is sitting in a chair, waiting, keeping watch. Something profound has shifted. The war inside her is over. She looks at Khalil, and in that look is an entire conversation. Remorse for what she put him through, and something that looks very much like gratitude that he didn't let her go. She leaves him in the hall and walks toward the maternity ward. She arrives just in time. One small, piercing, perfect cry fills the room. Nancy's hands go to her face. Her tears come fast and warm. Her grandchild, Jesse's child, has entered the world. A new life born from the wreckage of an old grief. Something to live for. Something that changes everything. The film ends not with dialogue, but with a single statistic printed on a dark screen. 30% of the ammunition used to kill American soldiers is manufactured in the United States.